or should I do so?
Okay, I started the recording.
We need to click the Start Broadcast button at the very top. It says attendees still on hold.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Neil Rosenberg from QTS. Frank, if you can bring the deck up, please. All right. So welcome to our webinar on Microsoft's Q1 2016 Cloud Roadmap. A couple of housekeeping things. The webinar today is being recorded for future reference, so we'll be sending out a link to everyone after the event if you want to refer to or share the recording with other folks in or out of your organization, as well as links to the roadmap sites that we're going to go over with you today. We are therefore going to have everyone muted, and I ask that you hold questions until the end. We'll be happy to answer at that point in time, but we do have a lot of material to cover, so we want to keep on track. And this slide has information for audio. If you're having trouble connecting to the audio, follow the instructions with the phone number, access code, and webinar ID on this slide, although obviously if you're having trouble with audio, you're not hearing me. So in any case, that's the ground rules, and let's move on to talk about today's agenda. So my name is Neil Rosenberg. I'm the president of QTS. Along with me presenting is our technical director, Frank Urena. Frank is highly knowledgeable across the entire Microsoft stack, and he's going to present the core content for today's session, which we're going to be doing on a recurring quarterly basis. This event is actually based on customer feedback that Microsoft is introducing so many changes so quickly to their cloud platforms, Office 365, Azure, the Enterprise Mobility Suite, and also other pieces like the Operations Management Suite, Dynamics CRM Online, which we're not talking about in today's event, that a regular recurring webinar talking about what's been added recently and what is being added in the near future is something that our customers have been telling us will be very beneficial, and so we want to make that available to you. So if we can move on to the next slide. About QTS, we are based in Parsippany, New Jersey, but cover the eastern United States and do work across the country and also internationally. We're a gold partner with 3 competencies, including the data platform cloud competency that maps to Azure, as well as a lot of silver competencies, and winner of local, regional, national, and worldwide partner awards over the last 15 years as a managed partner. We are the New York Metro Partner of the Year for Microsoft 2 of the last 3 years that they've given out that award. The other thing that I think differentiates us is our focus on knowledge transfer and collaboration. Our average engineer has about 15 years experience, 1 or more major certifications, and very strong interpersonal and communication skills. So we're very good at sharing knowledge with customer and working collaboratively in a knowledge transfer capacity. And we'll come back and talk about steps we can help you with at the end of today's webinar. So moving on, our agenda is kind of setting the table with a little background, and then we're going to talk about important recently added and upcoming new features, each across Office 365, Azure, and the Enterprise Mobility Suite. I could probably call these Frank's faves because the features that Frank is calling out is the most important. There will be other features we won't cover, but we're going to show you where to get to that information, and obviously we can help you with questions on follow-up as well. And we'll have a little time at the end for Q&A. So Satya Nadella, the new CEO, I can't really say new anymore, but the CEO of Microsoft has talked about their strategy being cloud first, mobile first. And clearly that's where the focus is being placed from the standpoint of Microsoft's products, even though there is a strong hybridization and most of their products can work on-premise, in the cloud, or hybridized between the two, and there's continued effort across the stack in that regard. Their products really tend to fall into the software as a service range of products, and then Microsoft Azure covers both infrastructure as a service, virtual machines in the cloud, and platform as a service, running applications built for the cloud. So from a software as a service perspective in the Microsoft world, we're really talking about Office 365, Exchange Online, what used to be Lync Online is now Skype for Business Online, SharePoint Online, Yammer, OneDrive. We're talking about the Microsoft Dynamics products, CRM Online, but then also the ERP products are being moved into this model, and Power BI, which we'll have a separate webinar on late next month, which is an important component of the new E5 part number for Office 365. And in yesterday's webinar, which we're posting, we recorded and we'll post shortly, on what is the Enterprise Mobility Suite and why should I care, the Enterprise Mobility Suite, which we're going to touch on today as well. So that's the range of products that Microsoft is covering here. Okay, next. So Microsoft has committed to a published roadmap for their products and the cloud. And there are two different sites for the Office 365 products. If you go to fasttrack.office.com/roadmap, HTTPS, it'll give you a website where you can see the recently launched feature enhancements, the feature enhancements that are rolling out, the feature enhancements, and that means that some customers will have it, some customers may not have it yet. Features will usually be turned on first for early adopters, and then with notification, major features and upgrades will be turned on as a customer. You can postpone upgrades for a period of time, but then ultimately you're going to be forced to in the cloud model. And then the in development and canceled, as well as previous released stages. And you can drill down in each of these to basically see what's on its way, what's been delivered, and what's been released for a little while now. So the Office 365 roadmap covers those pieces I talked about before, Exchange Online, Skype for Business Online, SharePoint Online, Yammer, and OneDrive, as well as supporting capabilities that are smaller pieces but important, like Delve and Sway and some of the other pieces of Office 365. The other products fall into the cloud platform roadmap, and that's a different website. It's Microsoft.com, English US Server Cloud Roadmap. You can see the URL highlighted in purple. And that's where you have separate sections you can filter for cloud infrastructure, for enterprise, which is Azure, for cloud, for enterprise mobility, which is the Enterprise Mobility Suite, data management and analytics, which would be Azure and BI capabilities around SQL, application development, which would be Visual Studio and Azure for platform as a service development, and IoT, the Internet of Things, which there's a whole Azure component for that. So there are a variety of features that are broken out there, and again, you have the same sort of thing of recently available public preview, which means it's rolling, you can sort of beta test it at your choice, in development, canceled, and archived. So you can drill down in each of these sections to see a highlight of the feature and then drill down for more details. Microsoft has done a very good job over the last year of keeping these sites updated and sharing out disclosure on what's coming from a product perspective. So now that we've empowered you to look the stuff up yourselves, we're going to drill down into each of these sections and talk about important features. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our technical director, Frank Godenia, who has strong experience across the Microsoft stack, and will be leading you through introducing you to the new features that are both released and on their way. So, Frank, Take it away.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. So as Neil mentioned, I'll be walking through some of the recently added features and some of the upcoming in the 3 areas that were discussed: Office 365, EMS, and then Azure. And as mentioned too, these are sort of my faves, things that I've kind of called out that I noted as what I would think would be important for an IT organization who is in the cloud or looking to transition to the cloud, or in the middle of that process. The roadmap, for instance, just on the Office 365 shows that, for instance, there are 72 different new features that were launched in the past few months. Obviously, from a time perspective, we don't have time to go through all of them. So I'm going to just call a few of them out that I thought were important. Azure AD Connect 1.1 was recently GA'd, as a matter of fact, just last week, and I kind of put this up as the top one because it's low-hanging fruit, something that if you're currently using Azure AD Connect 1.0, I believe the version is 1.0.9 something, this is a kind of quick and easy upgrade that you can perform, and it has some new features, some new enhancements, such as faster sync times, where now you can get as low as 30 minutes for your sync times as opposed to the default of 3 hours. You can have support for automatic upgrades for the tool, so that as new features and new abilities are being released, you'll have access to those in a more automated fashion. With 1.1, you're now able to switch your sign-on methods through the wizard, as opposed to having to uninstall and reinstall the tool if you wanted to switch from a federated solution to using password sync, for instance. That's now easier to do, so you can enable faster pilots in your environment. And you can also now filter your domains and OUs during the wizard. You typically, whenever we're setting this up for customers, you kind of have to have that all in place, or we will not kick off the synchronization of Active Directory to Azure AD until afterwards, until we've done the filtering, so that we don't have every single object in your AD synchronized up there. But now you can do that through the wizard, which is pretty nice. If you're still running an older version of the DIR sync tool or the Azure Active Directory sync tool in your environment, we do encourage upgrading to Azure AD Connect, now 1.1. Other features that were released actually back in December 4th in the US, Cloud PBX was now made available, and this is all part of that E5 licensing that Neil referenced. So some of the things that includes is Skype meeting broadcast. Skype meeting broadcast allows for these kind of town hall type presentations for up to 10,000 attendees on a Skype meeting. This is all hosted in the cloud. You can now do PSTN conferencing for meetings as well, so that you can host, as opposed to using a third-party PSTN dial-in conferencing solution. Now Skype for Business Online can be that provider for you. Microsoft could be that PSTN dial-in conference as well, and the same goes for the Cloud PBX and PSTN calling. So Microsoft has kind of entered the arena of the telecom space, where now you can have your PBX essentially moved from a legacy on-premise system to the cloud and hosted on Microsoft's data center. For OneDrive for Business, the next generation sync client is now available. So if you've been using OneDrive for Business and trying to sync, you know that there were some serious limitations with the client. The new client does remove the 20,000 file sync limit, and it now supports up to 10 gigabyte size files as well to be able to synchronize, and that's available for PC and for Mac OS X as well. Some upcoming new features, some things that are rolling out. These are kind of either rolling out or in development. I just kind of lumped them here together. But if you go to the roadmap site, you can see which ones are currently kind of in the rollout phase for early adopters, first release customers, and then will be wide scale shortly. But they're going to have, for Exchange, for instance, auto-expanding archives. So for those customers that really need these large archives for data, for their email data that you just can't go away, these auto-expanding archives are going to be enabled in the back end so that you don't have to worry about archive space filling up. It's almost like a bottomless pit for archiving purposes. There's a new administrator role called the compliance administrator role. So if you needed to assign someone the ability to do compliance for e-discovery, for litigation hold, that type of thing, there's a new role for that as part of the role-based administration. So you now no longer have to give that user, say, global administrator rights. This compliance admin role could suffice, and you could limit the access they have to the rest of the tenant in 365. For e-discovery, you now have the ability to expand the scope of your searches using wildcards. So for instance, you can use a search with an asterisk and the word drive, and it would do a search across OneDrive and other solutions with that term in them. So it just gives you that greater flexibility. Exchange Online Protection now will have a phishing protection enabled. They started to do that with the advanced threat management solution that was released last year, just shortly after Ignite, where it can do sort of detection of phishing emails, but they're now going to be start making that a part of Exchange Online Protection as well. Office 365 message encryption, that's something that we've had in place right now, but in order to use it, you did have to set up transport rules in Exchange Online in order to take advantage of O365 message encryption. Well, now that same type of encryption is going to be end user triggered. So an end user can encrypt messages without having a transport rule having to be configured for that. And the last bullet item, the allow deny list for external sharing domains, that applies to OneDrive. Basically, it's just going to give administrators the ability to create whitelists and blacklists for domains that their users can share or not share documents with. Moving on to the Azure roadmap. So some of the recently added features, Azure Backup. Azure Backup has been around for a little while, but now Azure Backup can do protection for VMs in infrastructure as a service. So if you have VMs in IaaS, you're going to be able to perform backups of those VMs. Again, this currently exists. This is not upcoming. You can do this today. And you can also back up on-premise Hyper-V VMs, Exchange, SQL, and SharePoint using the Azure Backup utility. It basically uses a DPM or Data Protection Manager, which was part of the System Center suite, a light version of that utility, to be able to do these application-aware backups and VM backups. Again, only for Hyper-V right now to the cloud, to your storage account in Azure. Azure File Storage or Shares, again, something that was released a little while ago, so it's been enhanced, but it's a standards base. It uses SMB 3.0 protocol. It also supports SMB 2.1, but it enables sharing data across on-premises and cloud. So you can set up a file share in Azure and share, mount that file share across Azure VMs that you may have and share data that way. But you can also, through a web interface, upload data from a client, an on-prem server or laptop, say, and upload data to that share as well. And you can even mount that share. There's a netuse command that you can run that will mount the share that's in Azure to a local on-premise client as well, giving you that spanning the cloud and on-prem solution for that file share. It gives developers, for instance, the ability to migrate apps to the cloud without having to change code. So an app developer that's currently using a file share, a traditional Windows file share using SMB protocol, can now leverage the SMB3 in the cloud as well for that file share without having to rewrite any code for that. Azure Site Recovery, there's a standalone version of that now, very cost effective for the SMB space or for branch offices that don't have any, let's say, virtual machine manager, which previously was a requirement for Azure Site Recovery. Now SCVMM is no longer required, so you can do Azure Site Recovery from a single Hyper-V server running a couple VMs into Azure and get the protection that Azure Site Recovery provides. And then there's the Operations Management Suite. That's a whole suite of products for alerting. It basically is an agent-based utility. You install an agent on your either Azure VMs, or you can install the agent on your on-premise servers as well, and get health data back into an Azure console on the health of those machines. It can also integrate with Operations Manager. So if you deploy System Center Operations Manager in your environment, Operations Manager agents can also communicate to Operation Management Suite in the cloud, and then you sort of have a cloud console of the health of your on-premise environment. And one other thing that I liked was the ability now to add multiple NICs into VMs in Azure. This was previously kind of a limiting factor where you only could set up a single VNet, but there was no way to get a NIC, for instance, if you had a two-legged service that needed to be on a DMZ, for instance, and then one NIC that was communicating on a private network. You couldn't do that previously, but with the new VNets and kind of the Azure 2.0 that we're moving to, the Azure Resource Manager, now you can set up VMs with multiple NICs and design your networks with greater flexibility and control. Some of the upcoming, so there's little scant information. These are some that I picked out that I thought would be useful to the audience here, but there's not a whole lot of information on them, on a couple of these. The first one, Azure Archive and Cool Storage. Cool Storage is not like, hey, that was cool, dude. That's actually what it's called, Cool Storage. It's meant for data that's going to be at rest and not going to be accessed very frequently. It's just a new storage model that they're making available. Same thing with the archive storage for data that doesn't need to be accessed in any expedient amount of time. It just needs to be at rest, but you just can't get rid of it. Some of the examples they give is like medical imaging documents, things like that. There's just a lower cost, so you pay for the gigabytes, but it's a lower cost because it's not very active data. Express Route and VPN side by side is another new enhancement to connectivity to Azure. So currently you either have ExpressRoute or you have VPN, but not both. Well, they're going to make that an option, or the ability to have ExpressRoute and VPN side by side, which could enhance your network for disaster recovery, for high availability. In case the ExpressRoute link goes down, you have the VPN as a standby and still be able to route your traffic accordingly. Operations Management Suite patching solution. So this is one that's upcoming. It's currently being rolled out, or actually in development, I should say. But you'll be able to patch your Azure VMs in an automated process. It's going to be able to provide you insight into the amount of time it's going to take to patch a particular machine and the sequence of patches that are going to be needed on the machine. It gives you just a lot of good information, and then be able to deploy the software updates to those servers as well. The idea being, being able to do rolling updates on VMs even in the middle of the day without having any downtime to the service that you're providing. Azure Site Recovery for VMware and physical to Azure. That is something that currently exists. I mean, it started with the acquisition of InMage and the company that Microsoft acquired. We're talking a couple, almost 2 years ago, but they've continued to enhance the product and make it simpler for you to deploy. So for those that have a large VMware footprint, being able to do disaster recovery to Azure is now a reality. It's something that can be done. Again, it continues to be enhanced. There's now less requirements in terms of virtual machines required on-premise and in the cloud in order to utilize Azure Site Recovery for VMware workloads, and also for physical servers as well. Azure Site Recovery SAN replication. This is currently in public preview. It's the ability to offload replication to SANs from your traditional SANs. EMC, NetApp, HP, 3PAR, and Hitachi are currently partners that storage partners that have partnered with Microsoft. They've made available new SMIS providers, which is the software that kind of obscures that layer, the storage layer, from the fabric. And Azure Site Recovery can now be used as an orchestration method. So this is not sending replication from your storage to Azure. This is still your EMC or your NetApp storage array talking to another EMC storage array in another center, but now it's that orchestration that you can do from Azure. Azure Disk Encryption, this is something that's upcoming, but it's basically, think of BitLocker for your Azure disk storage for security. The Azure Security Center, something that was just announced, I believe on the 16th or 18th of this month, but Azure Security Center is a cloud solution, cloud console to help you protect, detect, and respond to cybersecurity threats in your Azure IaaS environment. And then there's Azure Stack, and Azure Stack is essentially, think of bringing Azure and the capabilities of Azure down to your on-premise data center. So it's a hybrid cloud platform. It delivers Azure services from your own data center, and for application developers, they'll be able to use this write once and deploy to Azure or Azure Stack approach, right? They don't have to rewrite code for an on-prem solution, and then for Azure, they can write it once and you can deploy it to either one. Moving on to EMS, so the Enterprise Mobility Suite. These are some Intune updates that have happened going since November. So I've got some November, December, January, February updates in here. Some of those are the expanded use of MAM or Mobile Application Management Policies. Now you can manage applications that are being managed by other MDM solutions. So if you're not using Intune, you're using another MDM solution, but you want to be able to manage those applications on those devices, those new MAM policies can do that. And you can also deploy MAM policies to devices that are not enrolled into any MDM solution, such as a BYOD device. You can, for instance, a user that has an iPhone, they want access to corporate data, you can have a MAM policy just manage their Outlook, their Word, Excel, for instance, on that device, but nothing else. And all the policies that apply to those applications will get applied to that device, but otherwise it would be left unmanaged. There's now support in Intune for Mac OS X management. It'll collect hardware and software inventory for Mac OS X devices, and there's other capabilities as well. There's a whole matrix that shows what you can do, but that was something that people have been waiting for, being able to manage now OS X devices with Intune. I threw this third bullet into the use of the IMEI identifier to identify corporate-owned devices, only because I was asked about that at one point with a customer. They wanted to be able to use that IMEI, which every cell phone device has, to be able to identify their corporate-owned devices. Well, now with Intune, you can do that. You can use that IMEI number, and once it's imported, Intune will automatically flag it as a corporate-owned device versus a BYOD device. There are more apps now that are compatible with those MAM policies. For instance, Box is one that you can manage with the Mobile Application Management Policy. That's for iOS only. Adobe Reader for Android, and then Foxit PDF Reader for iOS and Android. So you can manage those tools as well, those applications with MAM policies. There's Windows 10. There's a bunch of new features for Intune as well to provide greater management of Windows 10 devices. For instance, Surface Pros, 3s and 4s that are running Windows 10. New features are are available for that. There was a whole list, so if that's of interest, at the end we can, of course, set up a different time to discuss those at greater length or send you the information. For the rest of the suite, again, these are all things that you can do today. Azure RMS, so the Rights Management Service in Azure, which is designed around data loss prevention and encryption of files, Word documents, Excel documents, OneDrive, SharePoint. Now you can have a document tracking feature, so if you enable this, when you share an RMS protected document, you can see what happens to that document, who's accessed it. You can then also revoke access to the document through an Azure RMS console. You now have support for RMS protected documents in Office for iPad, so users have that greater mobility, but you still have the protection of RMS on those files. The Azure AD application proxy allows you to publish on-premise applications that you may have that are web-enabled applications. The application proxy can publish those for you in a secure form using standard HTTPS protocol. But now with that, you can leverage the other features of Azure AD Premium, such as single sign-on and multi-factor authentication for access to those on-premise applications. That some of these could be custom-made applications. The app proxy now gives you that capability, extends the reach of Azure AD Premium. And then there's Advanced Threat Analytics. So Advanced Threat Analytics is kind of the outlier in the EMS suite, since it is a 100% on-premise solution, but it's governed, or its purpose is to give IT organizations early warning notice that they have a potential attack or intruder in their environment. The best analogy I can think of is if you've ever gotten that phone call from your bank or your credit card company asking you, why there was a purchase of $500 at a Lowe's in Phoenix when you happen to be somewhere in New Jersey. That's essentially what Advanced Threat Analytics is doing for the network. It's collecting information, analyzing behavior, creating a profile of users' behavior and other devices on the network that are Active Directory, domain-joined devices, and then when it picks up anomalous behavior, abnormal behavior, such as the impossible login, user logs in at 9 a.m. in New York, but then at 9:15 there's a login with that same account from China. That's an anomalous behavior. It can send up alerts and red flags on that and help IT organizations put out that fire quickly before more damage is done. Upcoming in the EMS space, they'll continue to enhance these MAM, these mobile application management capabilities. They're also going to enhance additionally the conditional access policies, which exists right now, but conditional access policy for Exchange, for instance, is one where you can, once you enable that, users will not have access to corporate email until they enroll into Intune, and those will be enhanced further. And then they're also going to expand the iOS capabilities by supporting the Apple Volume Purchase Program. So anybody that purchases their iOS devices through Apple, through this program from Apple, will then be able to leverage Intune sort of out of the box. And once you get your device, it's already enrolled, it's already going to be managed. All you have to do is give it to the user, and it will have everything you need on there. Okay, that's it for my part. I'm going to turn it back over to Neil.
All right, thank you, Frank. So let's roll to the next slide, please. So I hope your time here with us going over these new features was beneficial and you took some good value out of it. I think we certainly showed a lot of expertise and deep product knowledge on Frank's part, and that's representative of the rest of our staff as well. So for those of you that are looking at any of these products and you'd like to get a handle on how to deploy them and how to build a strategy around moving some or all of your footprint to the cloud, we'd love to set up a conference call or a meeting to talk with you about that, share our thoughts, and learn more about your situation, see how we can help you. In addition, QTS participates in the Software Assurance Planning Services Vouchers program. So those of you with enterprise agreements or significant select agreements, or the new program for that, might have vouchers not only for training but for planning services. And QTS participates in 5 of those programs with all the products we just talked about. So Azure Public Cloud, which includes the Enterprise Mobility Suite; Private Cloud, which includes flavors for System Center, Hyper-V, which includes VMware switching, and Windows Server and Active Directory; the Exchange and now Skype for Business planning, which can be for on-premise or Office 365; SharePoint, which again would be on-premise or Office 365, and desktop, Windows 10, Office 2016. So we do take those vouchers as a way of getting to know customers, and that's no out-of-pocket cost to you then. In addition, this also be able to get Microsoft funding to offset some of those costs. Finally, we run seminars and webinars on a regular basis, so follow that link to see our upcoming events. And we have an annual technology conference in September that you'll be seeing more information on next month if you're receiving our emails. So there's a lot of ways that we can engage with you around next steps on any of these technologies, and please reach out to me or to sales@qtsnet.com or info@qtsnet.com to explore where we can help you and add value. So with that, let's stop the recording and we can switch over into question mode.